decide on in 6 months, and then we will be on. January is the day, so they can move in December, but they have to renotice. We just need to keep it at all times first.
Slide. You want me to slide?
Thank you.
Slide over. I'll be about running down. Should take it. I'm gonna slide.
Would you want us to scoot over? Perfect. Got it. Is this shorter? Oh, I don't think this is mine. That's down there. Well, I mean, I know it's not mine.
Mr. Gillis, are you joining us at the table, or maybe not?
I can, and well, I'm ever available. I'm just,
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you plan to. We'll get you a chair.
Get on in there.
join.
So do we have everyone, as far as we know, at the table? Okay, Ms. Patel will be serving as legal counsel on this particular matter, and she's here with us today, so I'll turn to her and ask if she will read the notice for us, please.
Certainly. I'll do that. Salisbury Planning and Zoning Commission notice of public hearing regarding text amendment. In accordance with the provisions of Section 17.228, amendments and rezonings of the Salisbury Municipal Code, the City of Salisbury proposes amendments to the text of Title 17 zoning, Chapter 17.24.040.B.2a, to increase the allowable density in the central business district from 40 units per acre to 80 units per acre. A public hearing will be held on Thursday, November 21st, 2024 at 1:35 p.m. in the council chambers, room 301 of the Government Office Building, 125 North Division Street, Salisbury, Maryland, to hear opponents and proponents if there be any. Subsequent to the consideration of this proposal by Salisbury Planning and Zoning Commission, a recommendation will be made to the to the Salisbury City Council for its consideration at a public hearing. The commission reserves the right to close a part of this meeting in accordance with the Annotated Code of Maryland General Provisions, Sections 3-305B. For further information, call 410-548-3170.
Thank you very much. All right. At this time, since this is a public hearing, those of you who are here who would like to be heard in regard to this particular matter at the appropriate time, if you'd like to be heard, will you please stand, and Ms. Patel will swear you as witness. Yes.
I don't know, we've already been sworn. Do you want us to be sworn in as well, again?
Please.
Okay. All right. No problem.
Let's just give a moment in case there may be those in the hallway who would like to be in the room.
Just come on in, make your way in. Can you?
Do we think we have everyone at least in the doorway?
Needs to be able to hear.
Okay. All right, are you folks able to hear us that are in the hallway? Very good, thank you. All right, Ms. Patel, could you swear those persons?
Yes, Chairman. You do solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before the Salisbury Wicomico County Planning and Zoning Commission on November 21st, 2024, meeting is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you. Please say, "I do."
You better go.
Thank you all. All right? I think it might be helpful if those at the table who are not a part of our staff, which includes the applicant and perhaps others, attorneys, would you please identify yourself, give us your name and your place of business for the record?
My name is Owen Bailey. I'm the Director of Land Use and Policy for the Eastern Shore Land Conservancy in Easton, Maryland.
Brad Gillis, Salisbury Town Center Apartments, LLC.
Michael Sullivan, counsel for Salisbury Town Center Apartments LLC.
Ryan Showalter, I'm an attorney with McAllister, Detailor, Walker, and Showalter in Easton, 100 Northwest Street, and counsel for Salisbury Town Center Apartments.
Sarah Miller, Vice President of Economic Development for Margrave Strategies.
Haley Lemieux, the Director of Policy Development for Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development.
Thank you. All right, we'll turn to you, Mr. Uri, for the
Good
staff.
afternoon, everyone. Before we begin, you'll find some papers at your place. Those are late submissions from opponents and proponents of this requested case, and I wanted to make sure that every voice was heard, so it's all presented for you for your perusal.
Thank you.
So, you're quite welcome. Okay, as you mentioned, this is a text amendment to amend the zoning code, specifically section 17.040B.2.B. The applicant, Michael Sullivan, and others, on behalf of Salisbury Town Center Apartments LLC. And once again, the nature of this request is a text amendment. Our code requirements are as follows. In accordance with requirements of section 17.228 of the Salisbury Municipal Code, the Planning Commission shall forward a recommendation within 6 months of receipt of the application to the City Council. In accordance with the Salisbury Zoning Code, the City Council shall also hold a public hearing before granting final approval to code text amendments. And some of our request is as follows. The applicant has submitted a request to amend, as I mentioned before, Chapter 17.24.040B.2.B of the Central Business District to increase the inherent density in the Central Business District, also known as the CBD, from 40 units per acre to 80 units per acre as follows, with the amendment in bold. And you can see that in item 2B below. And it's just that bold part that says 80 units per acre. Everything else remains the same. You can find a copy of this request in the draft of the proposed ordinance in your attachments. And our discussion is as follows. The City of Salisbury Code, Chapter 17.228.020A provides a procedure for amendments to the zoning code, and that's why we're here today. I think you're familiar with these procedures, so if it pleases you, I'd like to just skip over that part. If you prefer, I will be happy to read it.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our evaluation, item 5. The existing comprehensive plan promotes future land use within the Central Business District as mixed-use development and redevelopment activities that bolster downtown's role as the home of government, retail business, entertainment, residential, medical centers, and waterfront recreation. According to city maps, the Central Business District comprises approximately 200 mapped lots across 77.5 acres of land. This is excluding city streets. This is just property. The uses in this district are a mixture of business, mercantile, healthcare, entertainment, residential, and publicly owned lands. And our records indicate that there are 291 residential units in the Central Business District. Therefore, the residing housing stock in the CBD currently exists at a density of 3.75 units per acre for the entire district. This calculation includes all public lands, such as this building where we are, including roads and public right-of-ways, so the overall density of proposed developed parcels is actually slightly higher. Densities for individual parcels range from 0.84 units per acre located at 224 West Main Street to 144.36 units per acre for the property at 130 through 144 East Main Street, also known as the Ross. You've seen reports before where I think it says over 300 units per acre, but that was for one property. Once all the properties were combined, the number reduced down to this 144.36 that you see. While conversations about downtown often center on the Main Street and Division Street core of the neighborhood, the Central Business District is actually an extremely expansive area, and below you'll see a map that, in red, that shows the entire area of the Central Business District. The CBD has historically hosted mixed uses with primarily commercial and professional services, but also residential uses. The application provides a helpful chart showing all the existing buildings within the CBD that have residential density greater than 40 units per acre. And once again, you'll see this in the attachments. The chart indicates that there are currently 9 such buildings. 7 of them have been between 2 and 8 units. The Powell building has 20 units and the Ross has 101 units. The 8 units beside the Ross are less than 80 units per acre, as the application notes. This small roster of above 40 unit density buildings indicates that is not a recent history of high capacity residential buildings in the CBD, as the Ross was only constructed in the past few years. The influx of new, large, high density buildings that this proposal can be expected to facilitate will be a departure from how residential uses have existed in the CBD in recent history. Increasing the allowable inherent density to 80 units per acre would, in a maximum build-out scenario, and that's if we mapped every parcel to have residential units built on them to the highest allowable density, would allow for up to 6,200 residential units to be built in the Central Business District. While such a maximum build-out is neither likely nor practical, this change in code will allow for an increase in residential units in the CBD greater than the populations of local towns that are nearby. Excuse me one moment. It's a lot to say. As the proposed allowable 6,200 residential units is not reasonable to project as a likely outcome for a number of reasons. For instance, the presence of government buildings which are not likely to be sold and developed, such as this building, though the county health department buildings is currently in the midst of this exact scenario. City staff worked with the applicant to workshop reasonably projectable development scenarios that could ensue as a result of this proposed change from 40 unit density to 80 unit density. An email discussion summarizing the projected project unit counts is included as an attachment as well. A short-term scenario of imminently developable projects, which include surplus city lots, projects that have submitted development plans, identified 603 units, which we've rounded to 600 units for simplicity's sake in this report, that are likely to be developed within the coming 5 to 10 years. A medium-term scenario of lots that are not currently in the pipeline for development, but could very reasonably enter it, noted by the applicant during discussions, as within like the next 30 to 50 years, but more likely in our opinion, 10 to 20 years, identified another 2,110 reasonably developable units, and again, we've rounded this to 2,000 units for simplicity's sake. Now, these scenarios, while inherently more speculative than focusing on the fact that the change will allow for over 6,000 units to be developed when the CBD is of right, provide digestible look-aheads for development and its significant broad-ranging impacts in and beyond the CBD where the proposed change to the code would be allowed. While encouraging residential use in the CBD is reflected in the city's adopted 2010 comprehensive plan, the plan also states that the CBD ought to have a wide variety of other uses. Effecting a change in code to dramatically increase the percentage of the build volume of the CBD could arguably crowd out and minimize the other uses downtown, as the code change intends to double the allowable residential units in the CBD without making any provisions for increasing the other various uses permitted in the CBD. By encouraging a relatively lower diversity of uses in the CBD through this crowding effect, that results from increasing only one use, and drastically, the proposed code change does not further to the goal of a wide variety of uses in the comprehensive plan. The 2016 Downtown Master Plan, also known as Envision SBY, similarly states as an objective that the city should encourage a vibrant mixed-use downtown. Another goal is to increase the amount of commercial area by 100,000 square feet, which providing for a law change to increase only residential uses does not accomplish. A proposed code change aligned with the plan would include language requiring a variety of uses that the plan spells out in its goals. Another goal in the plan is to remove 25% of the impervious area downtown. Proposing a code change that only encourages building more without adding or enhancing requirements as to how much green space must be included in developments to replace impervious area does not align with the downtown master plan. There should be a requirement of at least a minimum 25% of impervious area to green space conversion during any new projects utilizing any proposed increase in density, or arguably any new development projects at all. Now, the biggest concern with the application is that it does not provide an assessment of potential impacts of a doubling of inherent residential density within the entirety of the CBD. The most significant impact assessment supplied is a parking study performed last year. However, that study only discussed impacts of a single project being built rather than wide-ranging, large-scale development of residential projects within the CBD. A full study of all possible impacts should be provided by any applicant prior to any major proposed change to the zoning code such as this. In the absence of an applicant-supplied impact study, the city has attempted to do this work with available information and resources. The city's findings are as follows. Parking. Parking demand is a function of density. At present, Chapter 17.24 does not include a parking standard for the CBD. That said, Chapter 17.196, parking standards, does provide for parking guidance for the CBD as well as riverfront redevelopment districts. Per the text, a formal parking recommendation is required to be made on a case-by-case basis by the Planning Commission. That recommendation requires analysis based on the proposed density, the elimination of existing parking, if any, within the CBD. In recent years, the city has sold most of its surface parking subject to infill development. As such, the parking model has become both deeply restrictive and defined. At present, only one site exists for a parking garage to replace the previous surface parking and provide additional spaces to accommodate the new proposed density. Based on simple calculations, the proposed garage is grossly insufficient to support even the existing allowable density without any regard to increase in density. As mentioned earlier in this report, the parking study referenced in the application does not account for the parking demand of the up to 2,000 units anticipated to come with this proposed density increase. The study only accounts for the new building project referenced at length in the application, STCA, which only adds approximately 220 new units. Further, the study does not account for all of the surface parking lots which are currently still in use despite being slated for development, leaving the parking supply in the near future. The new proposed city-owned garage, expected to provide approximately 450 spaces, will not possibly come close to meeting the demand of all the new developments that will come with approval of the proposed amendment. A detailed parking study for the entirety of the CBD would help provide clarity on the matter and is absolutely necessary before approving a change like that proposed. A rough look at the demand created by 600 to 2,000 new units would lead to the need of a second, if not a third, additional garage at a similar size. Such projects falling on the city responsibility would cost at least $10 million to $50 million, presumably. Supposing the city could obtain funding for these structures, the question becomes: is there even available city-owned land in the CBD for the city to build such structures upon, which there is not? Excuse me once again. Emergency services. Additional calls for police, fire, and EMS would be expected to increase. Given the capacity of the existing fire and police departments, an increased call volume could place additional stressors on the city's existing staff and resources. For example, an increase of 600 units within the CBD could equate to an average of 1,200 new residents, roughly assuming 2 residents per unit. The average Salisbury Fire Department call frequency is roughly 0.12 calls per 100 people per month, which would mean an estimated increase of 144 monthly calls for service. At 2,000 additional units, which we're estimating approximately 4,000 additional residents, there could be up to an increase of 480 calls per month in the CBD. This volume of calls would likely lead to hundreds of thousands of dollars a year of new expenses for the city and additional personnel and equipment, a fact which the application has not studied at even a cursory level. Similar demand increases for SPD services in the CBD could produce a similar cost increase to the city's taxpayers. Traffic and road infrastructure. Additional housing density would invariably lead to increased traffic in the central business district. Using the same example of 600 additional units being built, housing 1,200 additional residents, there would be a like number of new vehicles being parked in the CBD daily. The new residents would naturally be making trips in and out of the CBD every day for work, school, shopping, and/or recreation, likely resulting in longer traffic queues at all the main intersections around the perimeter of the CBD. Spillover effects of increased traffic could include longer commute times, increased street-level pollution, negatively impacting pedestrians, as well as a more challenging environment for emergency service vehicles. More detailed data is not available at this time, as a traffic impact study analyzing a large-scale build-out of the CBD at 80 units per acre was not part of the application. Water and sewer infrastructure. Increasing the number of residential units would lead to an increased burden on the city's water and sewer systems, including pipes in the streets of the CBD and also lift stations around the CBD. Currently, 2 pump stations, one located at Mill Street and the other on the south side, and 1 lift station, which is located on Fitzwater Street, serve the CBD. Impacts to the Mill Street station, which currently takes in roughly 80% of the CBD's sewer flow, need to be considered. The station is currently operating at roughly 2/3 capacity, and an increase of 600 units would bring the station and its force main to capacity. An increase to 2,000 units would absolutely require costly upgrades to the force main and a pump station, which would incur additional costs and infrastructure improvements. Following the current alignment's non-perpendicular crossing of Route 50 would create even greater constructability challenges than a typical crossing would. Extensive study into this issue would be needed to fully hash out possible repercussions and costs. Although the wastewater treatment plant recently underwent a multi-million-dollar expansion and upgrade, the additional water and sewer capacity requirement for a dense build-out of the CBD could impose a significant burden on the plant's capacity. Further, the recent adoption of the county's sewer plan to address widespread failing septic systems will already be adding continuously increasing stressors to the wastewater treatment plant, though the magnitude cannot yet be defined. It is, however, bound to be significant as the county sewer system expands. The water resources element within the 2010 comprehensive plan states that the upgrades to the plant are sufficient to serve the total projected demand through 2030, even factoring in aggressive population growth in the city of up to 40,000 people. Pipes and structures within the streets of the CBD, both for water and sewer, are often approaching 100 years old or older and may be considered undersized for the capacity needed if development increases dramatically. Extensive study is appropriate before any significant change to density is made. Stormwater management. Stormwater and flooding issues are already significant problems in parts of the CBD, most obviously in the Lake Street Fitzwater area and the western part of the CBD. Changing code related to the CBD would ideally also include provisions that lead to more comprehensive stormwater management for the district. Comprehensive upgrade requirements could lead to lesser impacts on the CBD. However, no such code change has been proposed as part of this application. It's worth noting, however, that generally denser construction can be a useful component for mitigating storm impacts, as larger buildings tend to be more resilient due to their size and heft. Schools, parks, and public structures. There would be an expected increase in demand on the public school system with an increase in residential density. According to the Wicomico County Board of Education, most schools in the area are approaching or over maximum capacity. According to the National Association of Home Builders, the average school seat demands per 100 housing units is 41 students for new multifamily developments, the most likely type of CBD housing development with a significant increase in density. In other words, they're saying apartments. The demand figure is lower at 22 students per 100 units. Using the more conservative figure, the new projected development figures of 600 units and 2,000 units could reasonably lead to a new demand from the CBD of at least 132 school seats and as many as 440 school seats. With the school system being at or over capacity currently, the increase would likely lead to the need for multi-million-dollar capital projects to significantly expand existing schools or construct new schools. Park space in the CBD is currently limited to just a few facilities, including Unity Square, the Riverwalk, and the Bark Park. While the facilities do not appear to be overtaxed currently, a substantial increase in housing units in the CBD may lead to overcrowding and difficulty for residents to access. Changing code to encourage increased housing density without changing code to provide adequate public facilities for the increased population may reduce the opportunities for new and existing residents and visitors to the CBD to utilize the CBD's public facilities as a result of crowding. The most significantly impacted public structure will be the city's parking garage, which will see increased or surplus demand due to expansive new development at 80 units per acre. The impact is discussed more in the parking section, which is what we went over earlier. Environmentally sensitive areas, such as the Chesapeake Bay Critical Area, floodplain, etc. The entire CBD is situated in the Chesapeake Bay Critical Area Intensely Developed Area, also known as the IDA Overlay District. The CBCA IDA is a state of Maryland developed mapping resource which identifies sensitive tidal water areas where development may have an outsized environmental impact. In addition, much of the CBD falls within FEMA's identified floodplain. New development within these sensitive areas is generally discouraged and requires additional site mitigation reviews and approvals by state and federal agencies. Specifically, the 2010 Comprehensive Plan states that development in sensitive areas such as forests, wetlands, and floodplains should be minimized in an effort to reduce the growth-related impacts to the environment. In this regard, the application does not align with this important comprehensive plan goal of reducing environmental impact. Historical structures. CBD largely overlays with the downtown historical district. Projects involving changes to existing structures as well as new construction require review and approval by the city's Historic Commission. The Commission makes great efforts to both maintain the neighborhood's historic character but also to allow for projects to move forward. With a significant number of large-scale projects, replicating or referencing the historical nature of the CBD may be a challenge, and there is a likelihood of distinct changes to the appearance and character of the CBD ensuing as a result of this change. As an example, the Ross Building, while incorporating some historic elements and having garnered commission approval, exhibits a scale and massing that stands out significantly from the majority of other buildings in the CBD. Multiple new large-scale projects that could ensue could similarly and more substantially alter the character of the CBD, and consideration should be given to code changes that strengthen aesthetic controls over developments while also encouraging the developments to continue. Other impacts. Large-scale vertical developments within the low-rise CBD will be more likely with an increase in inherent density. A variety of impacts not previously discussed will result from such development patterns. For instance, increased shadows from tall structures will impact existing buildings and pedestrians by reducing hours per day of sunlight availability. Shadow studies are typically performed in conjunction with changes of this sort, but none have been performed here. A frequent result of shadow studies is new tiered setback requirements as structures rise to allow for mitigation of shadow impacts. Similar to shadows, airflow in a neighborhood that is impacted are large buildings. While the impact of projects is beneficial, it is important to carefully study all the impacts that likely projects may cause and incorporate protections and mitigation methods into code, which has not been done here. Other likely impacts from increased building size and density are light pollution and noise pollution, and these impacts have not been studied either. Spillover impacts. Besides impacts to the CBD itself, the proposal has a potential to deleteriously impact neighborhoods adjoining the CBD. Many of the impacts that can be expected in the CBD are also likely in these neighborhoods. For instance, a shortage of parking supply in the CBD will invariably lead to visitors to the CBD parking in adjoining residential neighborhoods, such as the Newtown neighborhood across Route 50. This may negatively impact the ability to residents and their visitors to park near their homes. However, without a parking study that addresses these spillover impacts, it's impossible to say how much excess street parking capacity there may be in that and other adjoining neighborhoods. Further, without survey data of visitors to the CBD, it's difficult to guess whether challenges parking within the CBD would lead to spillover into other neighborhoods or to visitors simply not coming to the CBD in the first place. The historically disadvantaged, is that right? Yes, okay. The historically disadvantaged neighborhoods of California, including partially on the western side of the CBD and partially in the Riverfront Redevelopment District, could become even more underserved over time as amenities and services are stretched to capacity by increased density in the CBD. I'm going to skip over this next sentence. Other CBD abutting neighborhoods that could experience spillover impacts are Newtown and Camden, two largely single-family residential neighborhoods. Besides parking impacts, the neighborhoods could also experience traffic impacts and quality of life impacts such as noise, light pollution, and shadows. While an increase in residential occupancy and density can align with goals of the 2010 Comprehensive Plan, the Downtown Master Plan, and the Metro Core Plan, it has been mentioned earlier that the proposed amendment presents a number of conflicts with these plans. Dramatically increasing residential use alone can have a crowding out effect on other uses on a per capita basis. The proposal also conflicts with goals of not developing environmentally sensitive areas. I'm going to skip over this next paragraph. The Metro Core Plan states that rigid standards such as a residential density shall be replaced by general development standards that permit flexibility. The approval of a text amendment to reinforce a density standard and in fact to make much of the growth of the CBD and a product of this new proposed density standard does not align with this portion of the Metro Core Plan. The opposite is true. It underscores a commitment from the city to set land use parameters on in a way that is in conflict with the plan. Within the central business district, the city has several goals. First, support growth which complements the size, proportion, and general architecture of the existing CBD. In that process, however, we seek to preserve accessibility and convenience. Both residential and commercial occupancies offer a sense of community and vibrancy to the CBD, but residential density increases need to be supported and guided by a host of amenities that will make it both convenient and livable. If those elements are not managed well, that occupancy will find alternatives and the desired development in the CBD will be stymied. In short, if done poorly, residents move and businesses fail, a path that is hard to cure once executed. Parking is an especially meaningful component of that equation on both fronts. And finally, our recommendation. Without reviewing a comprehensive analysis of possible impacts both to the CBD and to abutting neighborhoods, we cannot accurately predict the impacts this increase would have on the future of the CBD and other neighborhoods. Existing businesses and residents would be impacted at an unknown scale for the reasons discussed in this report. A density increase as proposed does not fully align with the goals of either the Downtown Master Plan or the Comprehensive Plan. As such, staff can unfortunately not support the current text amendment, but looks forward to a revised amendment request that incorporates thorough studies and sensible solutions to parking and other impacts that can be expected to arise as such a change is made. The desire is for a change to code that fully aligns with adopted plans and that both promotes downtown development but also considers and codifies methods to mitigate the fully assessed consequences of such an action.
Good job, Henry.
Thank you very much.